Hello and welcome to part 1 of getting Wagoneer Dana 44's under my 99 Jeep Cherokee. I already have the rear axle all set, as you can see, but I decided to film and share with you the front axle. Let's dive in. Here is the completed rear axle. The only thing missing is the shock mounts, which I'm going to wait until I get it under the Jeep so I can make sure I have them in the right spot. Now, I have it loaded with 410 gears, and there's also an Aussie locker in there, which is just a little lunchbox locker. Got a better view of it right there. That took a while to set up. And I got the brakes on there all nice. Here's a nice completed view for you. Here is the front axle that I'm going to be showing you the process of, let's say. I also like to mention before I forget, I only paid $175 for both the front and the rear, and a set of 410 gears. Also, this is not going to be a how-to video. There's not one right way to do this, and there's not any way I could ever provide you with an exact how-to guide to do this. This is just going to be a project series. First thing I decided to do was go ahead and remove the shocks, just a 3/4 bolt. So I threw a 3/4 inch socket on my impact gun and just went to town on it. It was a fairly simple process. And the only thing of that I had to do was just, tap out the bolts and whatnot. They came out though. This side was fairly easy. This is me just throwing on a 3/4 inch wrench on the other side to hold the nut in place. Then after it dropped out, I just picked the wrench back up and tapped it back out. It's not necessarily the right way to use a wrench, but it worked. So, that's it. Of course, the other side didn't come out quite so easy. As you can see, the impact wrench isn't even turning. So, it was time to pull out the torch. Got that fucker all lit up. Put some heat on that bolt. Not too much, just enough to break it free. Then, of course, I tried the impact again. No luck. So you know what that means. Wait for it. It's pipe time. Got the pipe hole set up on there. Got myself situated. And gave her some nice few turns. I got about, like 4 or 5 in, and then I had to throw a wrench on the other side. Probably another, I don't know, 15-20 turns. Got her out. Dicks. Here's the driver's side brake caliper. My fear was that it was seized to the rotor. The first thing I decided to do was just cut the bolts that hold it on, since I'm not gonna even bother trying to get those off. I'm gonna replace them anyways. So I decided to just cut it. And I'm sure my camera loved all those sparks. So I did this to all, actually just 2 bolts actually. 4 different cuts though. And I went and grabbed my hammer. Now, to my surprise and relief, it wasn't seized onto the rotor. Just a few hits, and it eventually started to move. Didn't really actually even take all that much force. As you can see, it's sort of peeling off now. And I just grabbed it, threw it off to the side. Useless. Then I just took and spun this to see what the bearings were like. They felt pretty good, actually. Here is the castle nut and cotter pin assembly. Obviously, in order to get the castle nut off, you're supposed to get the cotter pin out. Well, of course, it's been sitting so long and so rusted in there's no way it was coming out. So I eventually just gave up and just broke them off as close to the ball joint end as I could, and hoped that my big wrench would be able to just shear the rest of it off, no problem. I originally tried my smaller torch to heat it up and get it off, because there's no way without heat it was coming off. And the little torch did absolutely nothing, basically. So I went and got the big torch, settling torch that is, and got it nice and hot. So then I took my big wrench and gave her some torque. Obviously at first that didn't work at all. As you can see, I'm kind of struggling here. So I eventually just grabbed the hammer, and it was hammer time. A few whacks and it broke free. No problem. And I just kept hitting it to get it worked around, so then I could just use my arm to unloosen it, and then just a little bit of this. And it pretty much came all the way off. And that's what it took to get both capsule nuts off. At this point, I ended up running into a roadblock, so which I'll explain in my next video. So instead of just sort of sitting around and not doing anything, I decided to grab out the needle scaler and I started to needle scale the axle. Well, as it turns out, basically everything that was on there is actually just caked on sludge and grease. So it really wasn't anything to actually needle scale off. So I just packed it up. I then went ahead and pulled the fill plug off the diff cover. It just so happens that a 1/2-inch wrench fits onto the, or into rather, the fill plug. So then I just grabbed the pipe and went to town. After you get the fill plug out, make sure you smell it. And then I just tipped the axle forward a little bit and dipped or drained out most or as much of the fluid as I could. Then I just grabbed my regular wrench. I believe it was a 1/2-inch socket that fit, and undid all the diff cover bolts. Then it was just a matter of grabbing a pry bar and a hammer and just cracking the seal that's on the diff cover. I already had it pretty loose here, and I just grabbed the camera to film the rest. And that's more or less all the diff fluid that was left in there. And this is what it looked like inside of that axle. It's actually pretty clean. Of course, the fluid was a little bit smelly, but it's actually clean. There weren't any chunks or anything, and there wasn't anything blown up. Or quick lesson for today: this is how you would tell what ratio gears you have in your axle. You see the 49 and 18 right there? You would take 49 and divide it by 18, and that will give you a ratio. This one, I believe, was 2.66666. And then my camera died. I'll explain everything next video. But while I had a diff cover off, I went ahead and checked the backlash, so I knew where my base reading was before I changed the gears. It was on the tighter end of the spectrum. I think it was 0.006 of an inch. And that is it for this episode of The Weekend Handyman. Come back next time where I'll be doing some more disassembly. Thanks for watching.